All right. It is Thursday. It's Thursday. It's not Wednesday. We're having a discussion, tonight. And we had to restart the live because Instagram was doing something strange. I want to make sure I get both of my panelists on here. So at least once a month, I like to have different conversations that really impact our community. And when I say our community, that's the LGBTQ plus community, including allies. I like to have really thought provoking conversations that sometimes can be uncomfortable, that can be sensitive, but that definitely is going to bring us to a better place and is going to make us better individuals. So, this month, I have two amazing panelists that I'm going to bring on, and we're going to talk about dating, particularly like dating violence among gay men. And sometimes in relationships, as a gay man, we get physical, or sometimes it gets where someone is being controlling. So I want to just talk about like how that impacts our dating life, who we decide to marry, who we decide to not be in relationships with. And this is definitely a safe space for people to pose questions, to share their experiences, so that we all can go further. So I'm going to bring on both of my guests. Hopefully, this will work this time. Let have Quincy and Aaron. Hello in the live chat, and I will bring both of you on. Let's see.
Ooh, yay.
we, we, we got you. We got you on here. Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right. So
Oh,
now we just got to get Aaron on here. Let's see. We were having the hardest time, people. There we go. I'll send the invite. And I love the background as well. It's giving me a lot of color over there. All right, let's see if Aaron is able to join. And Aaron, if you're in the live chat, just say hello and I'll try to bring you on that way as well. And if you all have questions throughout the night, you are welcome to use the question function, the live chat, or you can come on if you would like to share any of your experiences or pose questions to any of us tonight. Let's see. Yep, Aaron, you can say hello there. I think Aaron, I want you to go ahead and say hello in the live chat. That way I can bring you on because it gets said you're unable to join. I don't know if Instagram is limiting me to one person today. That might be strange. Yesterday we had two and three people on, um, but that is strange. Let's see. All right. Yeah, I'll save this live and I'll also put it up on YouTube so you all can see this. Don't worry about that.
yay. There we go.
Thank you, Lord, because I'm like,
There we
what is
go.
going on? So I'm happy I have both of you all here so we can start the conversation. For some of you all who are just watching, once a month we're going to have conversations that really impact our community. This month we're talking about dating, particularly dating violence among gay men, and this is I tell you people, it's a safe space, like for us to be intimate, to have conversations that are going to help us grow, whether it's a friend, whether we're experiencing it ourselves. But this is really a time for us to just talk about like dating violence and some solutions. I'm all about like, we're going to talk about it. How do we change the situation? So, what I'll do by first is I'll let both of my guests introduce themselves, give us a little background about who they are, where they're from, and then they'll both share a little bit about some of their experiences and their stories. All right.
Aaron, you want to go first?
Yeah, Quincy, you go first.
All right, so hi everybody. I'm Quincy. I'm from Houston, born and raised. I work in public safety. As far as my experience with domestic violence, I wouldn't. So since my incident up until now, I still kind of struggle with some of the terminology for it because
Mhm,
I don't feel that I was in your stereotypical type
mhm,
of domestic
mhm,
violence.
mhm,
I just feel that my relationship really lacked emotional regulation.
mhm, mhm,
So, like, when we would get into those arguments, common, regular, like everyday petty little arguments, they would go and be blown out of proportion because my spouse couldn't regulate his emotions. And so, in our last incident, it had been such a stressful period. It just got out of hand. And because of some of his personality traits, there wasn't any accountability for the
mhm,
things that he was doing.
mhm,
So it was just like, you've hit me, but then now you take no responsibility for it, or you rationalize it in your mind that you were provoked or that I made you do that. So I'm not taking away from it at
mhm,
all, but just from it happening up until now, me just trying to rationalize everything that happened and how, you can go from being happy to
mhm,
now we're not speaking and I'm trying to heal
mhm,
both mentally, physically. It's just a lot of emotional regulation that just wasn't present.
mhm,
And the thing that I tried to harp on or just understand the accountability of that in itself, because if you can't regulate your emotions,
mhm,
it's just like
mhm.
you have no control over what's happening or how you're responding to those actions.
Yeah.
Hold on, guys. I gotta turn on the fan. I'm battling the flu. I
Okay,
saw
okay.
someone
And
said,
Quincy, do
"Why
you
does he
have
look so mad?"
Bluetooth in or
Yeah.
AirPods? It is a little hard for some of the people to hear you with the Bluetooth. Sometimes those are they're a little bit low. But if you need it to
Okay.
hear, that's fine. But you just gotta like speak up a little bit. Um,
Okay. Okay. I got you.
yeah.
Yeah, while Quincy is going, I guess I'll introduce myself. So my name is Aaron. I am from North Carolina, the mountains of North Carolina specifically. I spent some time in Boston. I currently live in the DMV area outside in Maryland, PG County. I'm an adjunct professor at Howard. I'm a PhD candidate, and I also am a behavioral health therapist. So a little bit of a lot going on here.
Mhm,
And I think similar to Quincy, I also still struggle with the language. I've had a few incidents with various partners over the course of my dating span of experience with people and individuals. But the latest one is probably the most complicated one that's been difficult to overcome
mhm,
because I really love that person. And I still love that individual. And as I speak about it, it's very difficult to kind of like embrace the fact that I had and wanted a future with that individual, and recognizing, realizing specifically now that that's not going to happen. But
mhm,
it was a similar thing with emotional regulation. But we had several incidents where it was dating was great for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, a month, and then we'd run into something that we couldn't navigate and we'd break up. But in terms of the incident itself, I was the victim, and so I always try and make it clear that this wasn't a fight. This wasn't a physical situation where I was defending myself. I was completely like a fawn when the incident circumstance took shape.
mhm,
But I do think that even in discussing it, I have not really received the type of apology that I think is helpful in my healing space,
mhm.
and I may never receive that. But also, again, like that emotional regulation is a piece and component I think that is familiar for a lot of us in same-sex relationships.
Yeah. And what I hear both of you all saying is that the terminology is so hard to kind of wrap our brains around when we talk about like domestic violence, whether you're a victim, abuser, batterer, survivor, like it kind of like forces you to choose a box of like where you fall. And depending on the dynamic of the relationship, it could be that you both are engaging in both types of behaviors, or like you shared, Aaron, like it was something that was caught off totally by guard, that it was not like something you were actively participating in, like in physical violence, where you were like really surprised that like you all's relationship reached that type of dynamic.
Yeah, and then there are always signs along the way, red flags, and I missed a lot of them or I ignored them intentionally. And in several conversations with my therapist, he was very honest with me. I think this person is going to abuse you.
Mhm,
From the things that you are sharing with me, there's an emotional overload here. There's emotional abuse and manipulation, and you're not paying attention here. You're not valuing yourself or putting yourself first.
mhm,
And sure enough, he was right. And so when I stood before him in the office with like a crazily bruised face and
Mhm.
swollen face. It was like I can't believe that this is actually a reality.
Yeah, yeah. I guess see someone put in a comment section that heterosexual people think that like two gay men fighting is normal because I know when I grew up in a house with a whole bunch of brothers, and whenever I got into an argument with my brothers, it would turn physical, right? And so when you start to love another man, some of that behavior transitions over in a
Mm-hmm.
bad way. Whenever you're having a
Mm-hmm.
disagreement, it's kind of like the pissing contest. Well, if I can't control you with verbally, then I'll control you physically. And that could be with violence. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. And to the point that was made, I think also that I had an issue with whether or not I wanted to press charges, and we
Mhm,
talked about this with
mhm,
the police officers. Most of their responses, because I in both incidents I called the police, but
mhm.
their responses were you guys horse playing, like
Yeah.
looking at it, it's like were you guys buddying, fighting, horse playing, and it got rough. It's like
Mhm,
no, this was an actual assault.
mhm.
So
Yeah. So how like
Wow.
and that was one of the questions we have we were to talk about like your like for both of you, like what was your interaction with like first responders, like police officers or the ambulance, like how did they treat you as a gay man whenever you reached out for help?
I kind of got a little bit of that, but it was very
Mhm,
lightly that they trailed. They
mhm,
kind of just inquired, like, were you guys just fighting? And because my face looked the way it did, it was just like, no,
mhm,
I was attacked.
mhm, mhm.
Like, help me.
Like this is not like we're just
So
playing
they're,
around or we just it was an
yeah,
accident. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Did they
yeah.
know that you all were a couple or did they just kind of assume that you
hmm
were roommates?
I mean, they asked, they clarified. Like, they got on scene and they just immediately started asking questions and they kind of like weeded that out.
Mhm,
But you picked up on that, like them in their way, kind of like downplaying the situation.
mhm, mhm,
And then it's just like, no, like this is serious. Like, do you see this?
mhm,
Like,
mhm,
help me.
mhm,
yeah, there was complete lack of empathy.
Yeah.
Um, when you call the police, and I think in any domestic violence situation, they ask if there are, weapons in the house, if there are guns,
mhm,
and
hmm
there were weapons in the house where I was staying with my partner at the time.
mhm,
And I lied, and I lied for the sake of both of us because we're two black men
mhm,
in Culpeper, Virginia. There's no way I'm going to tell them that we have guns in the house.
mhm,
So I lied. First responders get there. They're separating the two of us, what the case may be,
mhm,
and having conversation. But it's very much like, were you two fighting? This is Fourth of July night. Were you just drunk? Like, do you like what was the real situation here?
mhm,
Are you roommates? Are y'all are lovers? Um, but my situation, I ended up in the hospital and I had no one to come and retrieve me. Like I didn't,
mhm,
when I was discharged, I was kind of by myself. And so the nurse called the police officer that was dispatched to the case.
mhm,
And it was a man, a white man. And Culpeper, Virginia is incredibly like, empty Trump kind of area.
mhm,
And I'm in the back of this police cruiser and he had learned that I lied about the gun, right? And because my partner had talked to him, like, oh, he has a gun in his bag. I'm going to put a restraining order out on him. And so when he finally got me back to my car, the police officer said, I know you have a gun in your bag. Are you going to shoot me? And I'm like completely bruised up. Like,
wow.
did you see how I look? My face is swollen. I can't even see you.
Mhm,
And so it was a factor of like feeling like police brutality was going to be a situation,
mhm,
but also fearing for my life in that moment
mhm,
and not really
Wow.
necessarily having the support
mhm,
because then I'm like, I don't really know what this report is going to say if I decide to press charges,
mhm,
which I never did.
mhm,
So, but it was a run in, and I think police officers, first responders could have a little more empathy.
mhm.
And that also might be a matter for people deciding and determining if they're actually going to do something about it in general.
Yeah. And so it can be challenging because you don't want to do things that are going to escalate the situation for yourselves or the police officer. So it is that like that balance of like how much information do you share or do you not share so that things can go smoothly, but so that you both can be safe as well.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that "Are you gonna shoot me?" comment is
Oh God,
wow.
it was the scariest thing ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when you're already in the back of the car.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Yes.
what do you mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
So there definitely needs to be more training for like first responders when it comes to our community. And like I even did some research beforehand, and people are like, ask questions like, do we as gay men experience more incidents of domestic violence than heterosexual people? And it's about the same. It's surprisingly, it's about the same. So I think it's not talked about or it's normalized in our community whenever two men fight, it's kind of minimalized, like where it's just like, oh, well, they got to
Mm-hmm.
fight. But if it was a man and a woman, it's like, wait a minute, there's a big problem here. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Have you all experienced some of that?
Yeah, and I think because with straights, there's the rule you don't hit a woman.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so like that is like the basis
Hmm.
of the big no-no for
Hmm.
domestic violence. But
Hmm.
then with us, you're same sex. So it's just like, oh, well, you're mad if it gets there, I do feel it's a little bit more accepted because you are the same sex.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it feels like it's an even playing field
Mhm.
as opposed to in straights,
Mhm.
oh, you don't hit a woman
Yeah.
or don't hit a man
Mhm.
because if he hits you
Mhm.
back, you can't
Mhm.
complain.
Yeah. And one of the two, one I saw one in the comments, and it has nothing to do what your sexual position is, whether you um, are the top, bottom, verse, or
Oh.
the one who is
Oh.
experiencing the abuse, or actually the one who's doing some of the physical violence. That's a misconception, 100%.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, my partner, we were very much first, but he was definitely 30, 40 pounds heavier than me.
Mhm.
But I remember telling my friends, the first response I got from both friends and family was, why didn't you fight back?
Mm.
It wasn't like, I'm sorry this happened to you. It was like, why didn't you man
Yeah.
up and fight back?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think, a lot of you know, LGBT gay men also harbor a lot of that masculinity factor as
Mhm.
well about like, well, we fight back and we're fearless and things
Mhm.
like that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I got a lot of those same comments as well. Like when I posted my video, like, "Oh, did you at least pinch him?" Like, "Oh, you better learn to fight back."
Hmm.
And it's like it's not even one of those types of situations.
And and I'll even share like from my experience in my 20s when I dated a guy, and I haven't talked about this publicly before, but I lived with a guy. We were in a full relationship, and we would physically fight regularly. And it wasn't a situation where I was a victim. We both were the. There were times I started the physical fights. There were other times that he started the physical fight, and we thought that was normal. We thought that was a way of you get into an argument, this is where it goes. And I think there needs to be a
Mhm.
lot more education around like how to gay men navigate arguing, especially when um, tempers rise or whenever you get angry. Yeah, yeah.
I don't disagree, but I also think that there's a component where we have some self-loving to do, some
Mm,
therapy, some healing to do, and
mhm,
it's not necessarily a collective thing. I can't help you manage your temper. Like that's between you, God,
mm,
and
mhm.
your therapist.
Yeah,
You work on
Mhm.
that,
yeah.
right? Like, because I am
Mhm.
not going to physically harm someone unless I need to defend myself, and even then, it's probably going to be something I question. I'm calling the people. I'm calling the police.
Mhm,
So I agree, but I also think that there's a component where we have a lot of unhealed trauma, and
mhm.
we don't know how to navigate that.
100% agreed. And one of the things, like, I had conversations with my ex afterwards, and I was like, why do we always get to that point? And he said he was taught that, and this was the strangest thing that blew my mind, that um, in order to have good sex, we had to have a good
Wow.
argument.
But you can do that without it getting physical.
I
I
agree.
mean,
I agree, but I think his past experiences that he shared was
mhm.
that was the
Mhm.
norm for him. And so I wasn't aware of that. So I'm finding myself in places where I'm just like, wait a minute, I thought we were having a good time and you're starting something out of the blue, but that was the norm. That was the norm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do think people grow up in spaces of chaos, and so they need to see that repeated,
Mhm.
and that's
Right.
just familiar to them,
Mhm.
and so it's like a
Yeah.
cycle, and
Yeah.
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 My
Yeah.
first boyfriend
Mhm.
had that type of past
Mhm.
where the person he was with before
Mhm.
me, that's how they handled conflict.
Mhm.
And it was just like a normalized thing for them. Like they're standing in the kitchen one minute and the next thing you know, they're scrapping it down.
Mhm.
And I was just like, I never wanna we're not doing that.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
Yeah. 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 So
Mm-mm.
can you talk? I want to talk about like we all have friends, maybe family members who have experienced some of this, and like, are there like particular signs that you all think that a friend, a family member, if you're dating someone, they say like these red flags that say this is
Mhm.
what's going on. Can you all point to some of those?
Whew. Yeah, so I would say I don't know how to really put it into words, but like I can give examples. surveillance. When people are trying, when your partner needs to surveil you, if they need to go through your phone, if they have trust issues, or if they don't respect boundaries or
Mm-hmm.
your privacy, that's a red flag. And for example, the last guy that I was dating that the incident occurred with, he would tell me, I have friends in lots of places, so wherever you are, I know what's going on, what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing, so don't think you can. And so those kinds of things are they're like, it's a form of manipulation, but it's also like a surveillance factor, and that's definitely a red flag.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So definitely making sure they're keeping an eye on you.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anything you can think of, Quincy?
Um, for me, I really just think that that emotional regulation
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning
Mm-hmm.
is just like the hugest red
Mm-hmm.
flag because like when you can't navigate even the smallest conflicts,
Mm-hmm.
as you continue to progress, it just only gets worse because you never master or get those tools to just to be able to deal with the conflict that is inevitable throughout the relationship.
How did that like show up? Give us an example. Like, some people might not understand like emotional regulation. Like, is this like an outburst? Is it like tears? Is it shutting down? Like, how does that show up when like something occurs?
Shutting down,
Mm-hmm.
shutting down,
Mm-hmm.
shutting down, the no talking, the periods of just, oh, I don't like you anymore. And then it's just like that span of just deadness.
Mm-hmm.
And then after a little time it's passed and it's just like, oh, okay, I love you again.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, that's the
Mm-hmm.
stonewalling. It's like I'm going to what's the word? I'm punishing you, so it's called stonewalling. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm keeping you over
Mm-hmm.
here, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to come back every once in a while, and let you grovel at my feet until I am ready to do it again. But yeah, yeah,
Right.
stonewalling for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Yeah.
Something I experienced.
Yeah. I think one flag that I noticed was not wanting me to spend time with certain friends. So it's like, oh, you're hanging out with that person again. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, she's my good friend. Oh, I don't like her. So it was always making a scene around her to try to kind of put a wedge between the two of us. Um,
Oh,
yeah. And I'm big on
that's
like close
bold.
friends. Like I have a small knit close friend. So I'm like, if you don't like my friends, there's something wrong because my friends are nice. Yeah, someone said keywords as isolation, like trying to keep
Yeah,
you isolated from your support network. So those are different signs that you can think about. How do you all think
yeah.
like friends can intervene like throughout this?
I've been pondering on that the whole time, and
Mhm,
I don't really think they can.
mhm,
I feel like they can be very intricate in the support, but just thinking about like what my friends did do throughout the
mhm,
process, they kind of just like stood back. They pulled my card a few times,
mhm,
but it was more in just like tough love.
mhm,
But I'm just gonna support you until you figure out what you want to do
mhm,
because I think that's all you really can do. Because if they push too much, then you become defensive with them, and
mhm,
then now
mhm,
you're taking your anger out on them for something that they're trying to help you go through.
mhm, mhm. 100%. So it's kind of like I hear you saying like your friend just kind of stood there because hey, I'm here to support. I might push a tad
Mhm.
bit, but not too much because they need to still have access to you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that like friends are usually the ones to tell you first that this isn't right.
Hmm.
Right.
Like, and my friends said over and over again, this is a toxic relationship. What you're sharing with us. I also think that like energy and love for you when you're going through this situation, you're in your bubble, is finite. Like people have a limit to how much they're willing to hear and listen to you vent,
Hmm.
especially after they told you time and time again that, hey, something is wrong here. If you're choosing to remain in that situation, circumstance, I'm going to stand by you and love you, but like I don't want to hear about it anymore. And my
Hmm.
friends definitely did that to me.
Hmm.
And I respect that, but like also, as we mentioned earlier, I gave into the isolation factor of like being away from my friends. Like my partner was like, these people are not good for you. If you're hanging with these people, then that means you don't want to be with me because they're not relationship oriented and we're relationship oriented. So I do think friends are usually like that front line,
Hmm.
but after a while, after repeating themselves, they get a little tired of it.
Right, right. Because their friends are like
Mhm.
they want you to be healthy, they want you to be safe, and they have to set some type of boundary where they're not being drained by the situation and overwhelmed by it. I think one of the my closest friends, one of the best thing he did was just repeatedly say, "Hey, I want the best for you." Like, "Hey, I
Right.
want you to want the best for you too." And that just resonated with me to be like, I want the best for myself as well. I just need to believe it for myself, because
Hmm.
if I don't
Right.
believe that, then I'll stay in a situation that is not healthy. Yeah, yeah. Um,
Absolutely.
why do you all think people might stay in these types of situations? Oh well, before that question, I see someone there had a question. They were asking like if you all lived with the guys that you were in a relationship with.
Yes.
We lived together for a while, but during the time when it was happening, I was over at his house, then like spending time with him for like what was a good 3 week period. So we weren't like live-in partners at the moment, but we were like constantly at each other's place.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so why do you all
We weren't
think
living
some
together.
people might stay in these situations given like they it doesn't feel good, they're it's still happening, because people are just like, "Oh, just leave." Like just get up and leave. Why do you think it's not that easy?
As someone just commented, lack of self love,
Mhm,
lack of
mhm,
boundaries, lack
Right.
of knowing better.
mhm,
I feel like I grew up in that same type of toxic behavior.
mhm,
So as an adult, it feels normalized to be hurt by someone that close to you.
mhm,
And after a little time, you kind of just like, okay, well, we can get past it. We
mhm,
can work on it.
mhm,
And there are no examples of just like putting your foot down and walking away from things that you don't feel serve you.
mhm. Yeah. I see somebody in the comment section said because sometimes financial reasons, some people stay because there's no other option. Some people are scared to leave. Um,
Yeah.
I will when I finally ended the relationship with this person who I lived with years ago, um, I literally left while he was at work. Like had movers come
Mm-hmm.
into the house, clear out everything, moved to a new apartment, got my address changed weeks before so my mail could be, transferred somewhere
Mm-hmm.
else.
Mm.
Because I knew if I had said, "Hey, I'm moving out," or "I'm leaving," it was going to be a physical fight. Like hands
Mm-hmm.
down, there was not going to be, "Oh, okay, well, you can take your stuff, I'll take mine. Let's have a adult conversation about it." No, I had to make sure I turned all utilities off because they were in my name well in advance. Get a U-Haul, get movers. He came home after work to an empty house, and that was the
You
only
know,
way that I the only way that if I didn't want to get in a physical fight.
No, I understand. I understand. I had a lot of that same thought process
Mhm,
with some of my
I
escape moments.
mhm,
I actually went back. I
mhm,
went back to my partner and
mhm,
like we resumed dating and stuff like that. And it wasn't until we were having a conversation I finally got the doctor bill. It was $275 after insurance, $275, and we were sitting down at dinner. I remember, and I said, I need you to pay this bill. I'm not pressing charges. I'm not doing anything
mhm,
like that
mhm,
because I didn't want to ruin his reputation, and I also like loved him and I was protecting him. But you're going to pay this doctor bill.
mhm,
And he tried to negotiate the doctor's bill. He's like, I'll pay 75%. And like I realized then that this person has absolute zero care and concern for me. It's time for me to go. And as someone mentioned in the chat here, it was a matter of love. Like I had overparentification when I was a kid, and most of my belief and value comes from what I think I can do for other
mhm,
people.
mhm,
And so like, I've been on a personal journey of like trying to heal that part of me, but it's definitely like over empathetic, definitely someone who is people pleasing.
mhm,
And so we end up in these abusive situations not realizing that it's like a tunnel and we're just digging, digging, digging more of it.
mhm.
And a part of like healing and getting out of that is also doing that inner self work.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Listen, Aaron, you hit the nail. Like you just touched the nerve of mine because in this situation, I had like all the utilities in my name, right? Again, weird dynamics in the relationship that I allowed. That I said, okay, sure, I'll have everything in my name. I'll pay stuff. I think I got $1,000 electric bill, right? And for months, we had been splitting the bills, and he would give me a little bit of money. I give him some money to pay the bill. So I'm thinking for months he's paying the electric bill. No, he's not paying the electric bill. So I opened the mail one time. It was $1,000. That was the breaking point for me. That. It was like, oh wow, I've been giving you all this money to pay this bill, and you been using money for something else,
Mhm.
you no longer care about our well-being mentally, physically, financially. For me, it was the money. It was like that really hit the
Hmm.
nail on the head for me. Yeah,
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
I wish my bill was $247.
Yeah, my bill after coming out of the doctor's office is $275,
Mhm,
and then I ended up spending the night in a hotel
mhm,
and paying like
Uh-huh.
$150 because I couldn't drive home to see. Like
mhm,
home was like 2 hours, 2.5
mhm,
hours away from him.
mhm,
But that conversation shattered me
mhm,
because it's like I've been living, spending time in an illusion.
mhm,
This person doesn't value me, and if it wasn't enough to see that he put me in the hospital and didn't care to come and get me, didn't come to any of that kind of stuff, it was enough to see that me having to beg him to pay a $275 bill
mhm,
was a problem
mhm.
in and of itself.
I think it's strange. Just it's like the weirdest things that become the turning point. And for other people, you would think that like the full physical blow up fight would be the turning point. But
Yeah.
other things like no, it's I know you experience like, oh, you financially don't support me, or I have to negotiate some shit with you, and it's like what? Like
After I protected you
like
from a lot of this stuff. So yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah,
insane.
yeah. Quincy, what was the turning point for you? Like where you like it just said, hey, I'm done with this.
That that moment when
Mhm,
I had to like take a picture and send it to a friend, like, come get my car,
mhm, mhm,
come get me from the hospital. Like that was just, I wouldn't say I'm vain, but at the same time, I was just like, look at my
mhm.
face.
Yeah, yeah,
Look at my face.
mhm, yeah,
That was, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's talk about, and there's some questions before we get into some solutions. I'm going to look at some of the questions if you are open to answering from people who have been sharing it for this. And I think you all know this is a deep topic. I've had to take some, deep breaths to kind of navigate through this conversation because um, these are our personal stories, but hopefully it helps other people to realize that this is not normal, like this is not like healthy, and that like you can have better for yourselves. Yeah. Let's see what questions we get. Hmm. Someone said, how do you both navigate relationships now? Are you in the place where you're like even consider dating again? Like where are you?
Mm.
Quincy, you want to go first? You shook
It's
your head.
I saw the
it's
head
only,
like
Yeah, yeah.
so it's only been 3 months,
mhm,
and just from the amount of people that tried to trauma bond with me,
mhm,
it's just a no-no.
mhm,
It's
Mm.
just a no-no.
mhm, mhm. Yeah.
Because like that was so off-putting from a lot of people. And I don't even think some people realize they're doing it. It's just like, dude, my eye is still swollen. Like, why are you hitting on me?
Mhm, mhm.
Like,
Talk
get
a
out
little
of
bit
my
more
inbox.
about trauma bonds because some people don't realize it. They think that like that's a way to connect.
Yeah, so like I had a large outpour of people
Mhm,
that shared their stories,
mhm,
shared their experiences. That's actually how me and Aaron started talking. And some people aren't as just genuinely just trying to share their
mhm,
experience. Other people take that and then they're like, "Oh, I went through this," or I saw what happened to you, and then they start trying to check on you, and then it's just like you slowly start seeing them flirting, and then it's just like they're just inching and inching and inching, and it's just like that's creepy. Like,
mhm,
don't take my
mhm,
my experience as the door for you to come in and try and save
mhm,
me, or
mhm.
you've been waiting for your opportunity, now you think this is it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Especially if you're in a vulnerable space and you
Right.
want
And they
support
try and
from
take advantage of that.
yeah, you want support from friends and family. You don't want someone taking advantage of your situation. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Am I dating? So that incident happened. The last one happened in July 2021. I finally ended the relationship in February 2022. I've been going on dates, but honestly, I was thinking about this today. If I were the Earth and there were fossil fuels are not finite, right? We
Mhm,
know we're going to run out of them. I think I've run out of. I honestly do feel like I have run out of love and desire to date.
mhm,
And I am in
Hmm.
therapy. I am in
mhm,
the place of like doing like that self healing and turning around that energy and pouring it into myself. But a lot of my experience in dating as of late has just been a lot of superficiality.
Hmm. Hmm.
So there isn't, we're not building depth.
Hmm.
And then I am also privy to a lot of the circumstances where it's like, I see that this is going to be a major red flag. Now, not everything has to be a red flag that means, hey, I'm abandoning ship. But I think for some of us, we're just afraid to sort of navigate and communicate like, hey, this might be a problem. Can we work on it before it turns into something larger? And I'm not quite yet there,
Hmm.
but I'm working on it.
Yeah. Thank you for being so transparent. And I will tell you, at the time that I was going through my situation, I was graduating with my master's in professional counseling, right? So it was like I'm supposed to be this therapist, helping other people, but for the past 2 years, I'm like
Hmm.
going blow to blows with someone I'm in a full relationship living with, having, sometimes to be like, oh, I can't come into work because, you know,
Hmm.
the makeup can't hide this,
Yeah.
And
right?
that's crazy because it's like you're intelligent, you understand it,
Mhm.
but when your heart's in it, it's hard to navigate it or
Mhm.
you make excuses for it.
Mhm.
And like what Aaron said,
Mhm.
it becomes a thing where it's like, okay, I noticed the red flags, but what red flags do I say, all right, jump off,
Mhm.
jump
Yeah.
off?
Mhm.
'Cause I think with any relationship, they're gonna be red flags,
Mhm.
but it's just like which red flags are the ones to
Mhm.
run from?
Yeah, yeah. And I think everyone has red flags, if we're honest. There are different
Yeah,
things
yeah.
about all of us that we have to continuously work on. And that's not the problem. It's about when you are in denial about your red flags. You're not trying to progress. And you're just like, this is what it is. And then you're like, okay, well,
Hmm.
if that's what it is, we don't need to do this because if you're not trying to make some type of progress, then there's really no hope. And I think at one point I was
Hmm.
just like, I'll never date again. I was just like, like it's like, it ain't nothing. But I think it took a long time therapy, definitely a good therapist, and just having more conversations with God about like who I am, my sexuality, because I think a lot of it had to deal with. I was still struggling with a lot of internalized homophobia about like what it means to be a man, what it means to be spiritual, what it means to be gay, and I still was kind of brainwashed by what straight people had to say about who I was as a person, which allowed me to stay in some of those situations. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to pathologize, but I just think that, at least for me, we didn't grow up in like stable homes. We didn't see securely attached people together rearing families and
Mhm.
children.
Mhm.
And so we also don't have the blueprint. We don't have good blueprints for Black same sex, same gender loving men to understand how relationships unfold and look. And I think this is just like a lot of work that we have to do individually and collectively. But just if you can find someone who is willing to do that work
Mhm.
by themselves and with you, then that's a good thing, especially in today's dating world.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me get maybe two more questions. Let's see. Mm, how do you navigate dating now? We talked about that. That's another one. We just did that one. Okay, let's see another one. What did you learn from the situation? Like, if there's one key thing that you can take away from the situation that you're like, this is a great, because I feel like every relationship is a lesson, an opportunity to learn something. Like, what is something you would take away from that?
It, it's really
Go
important
ahead.
to love yourself. I'm going to keep it simple.
Mhm.
It's really so very important to
Mhm.
love yourself.
Mhm.
And the pitfall for me was that, again, being very empathetic and people pleasing, I thought those were virtues.
Mhm.
Like it's like a virtuous
Mhm.
thing to be that.
Mhm.
But you owe yourself that first,
Mhm.
right? And so if you give yourself that love and empathy before you're willing to sort of pour it out
Mhm.
towards others.
Yeah.
Right. So definitely the people pleaser
Mhm.
or the hyper independent,
Mhm.
but more so in my relationship. So, oh, I got it. Oh, I'll do it. Oh, don't worry about it.
Mhm.
To the point where it's like everything is on your plate.
Mhm.
And it's just like learning to be okay with, all right, well, it failed. It
Mhm.
didn't get done. Like it's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to save everything. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to do everything. Like it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, it was being in a relationship. Control shouldn't exist
Ooh.
on both parts. Like, I don't need to be in control. He doesn't need to be in control. there should be a relationship based on freedom. And when I say freedom in all aspects, freedom to express who you are, to make your own decisions, your own mistakes, freedom to see your partner happy. And I think, um, my personality was I needed to be in control and he needed to be in control. And when those two butt heads, it doesn't work out well. So freedom. Yeah. Yeah.
I appreciate that because I do think that there's an aspect of like ownership with
Mhm.
relationships.
Mhm.
Like this is my person,
Mhm.
Hmm.
and I also want to control how things are going and
Mhm.
whether or not this person can remain beside me. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, as I look back, like if I had not gone through that type of relationship, I wouldn't be ready for my husband today.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
I could have done without the abuse, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I could have done without the abuse
Yes.
and like the issue with my. I could have done without that, but I've learned a lot. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say yes.
But
Yes. Yes.
I won't say it's necessary, but sometimes we're hard headed.
Hmm.
We're hard headed,
Yeah.
and we've ignored everything that led up to that point.
Hmm.
So now it's like the
Hmm.
universe, God's just like, hey,
Hmm.
pay attention.
Hmm. Yeah.
You know, saying that, Quincy, I was talking with my therapist and I said I felt like the longer I kept ignoring those red flags, the fainter my intuition got.
Hmm.
And so I'm telling everybody here,
Mm-hmm.
your intuition is a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful thing. You
Hmm.
like nurture it, guide it, and stay in touch with it because when it's loud, it gets fainter and fainter as you go
Mm-hmm.
along, and then it takes abuse or it takes a situation like that to wake you up.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Let's see if we can get one more question. Should couples have couples counseling before moving in with another person? Hmm.
Yeah, I feel that couples should have couples counseling without having problems.
Hmm. Hmm.
I feel
I
like it
agree.
should just be a norm just to seek help and get those tools.
Yeah.
I feel like people have a negative stereotype of counseling because they feel like, oh, you're going to go in a room and then get blamed for this, that, and the other. But we don't have blueprints, we don't have any role models. So I feel like it's helpful to go somewhere and let someone give you the tools you need in order to navigate your relationship.
Hmm. Yeah, I think.
I agree. No, I was gonna say I agree, but I also I want to say that some people will be dealing with different types of partners that are narcissistic, and unfortunately, some therapists and counselors are not privy to it, and so it's like seeing that relationship dynamic. I think it's just really important to make sure that you find a therapist that is going to value both sides.
Yeah, yeah. I think couples counseling is great. I do think what's more important is individual counseling. Like
Hmm.
when I say like as gay men, there has been so much shit that we have been taught about who we are and who we're not, and we internalize that, and that allows us to develop like horrible coping strategies and skills. So I think if you've never gone to therapy, do it for 6 months. Like people literally go
Hmm.
to the gym to get abs, to lose weight, but they don't take the time to process all the shit that our society says who we are. And it shows up in your relationships. So before you even try to like really get into a serious relationship, try it for like 6 months. I think you'll evolve so much. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely agree with
Yeah.
that. 100.
One last question and we will be done. This hopefully you are enjoying this conversation. Yes. Um
Can we speak to an abuser?
Somebody said, what is a question you wish you would have asked your partner prior to any of the type of physical violence?
Hmm.
Emotional regulation. I wish that would have clicked in my
Mhm,
mind
mhm, mhm,
much sooner and earlier.
yeah,
And it could have been something that could have been explored or
mhm,
understood
mhm, yeah,
much earlier on.
yeah. I think
Huh.
for me, it's how do we handle disagreements? Because
Yeah.
I think that was like it was the stair steps to all the problems. And
Hmm.
or better yet, how do we have uncomfortable conversations? Because it was a lot of shit that we didn't want to, excuse me for cussing, that sometimes I do, I'm sorry. But it was a lot of shit that we didn't talk about. And when someone had too much to drink or someone was angry about something, it was just like a snowball effect. And instead of just talking in the moment about things that we were, were on our minds. Yeah.
I would say I would ask, are we being honest about our compatibility or
Mhm.
about our insecurities? Because they keep showing up a lot.
Mhm.
And like our progress is met with one issue after another. So are we being honest
Mhm.
here about our personal insecurities
Yeah.
and with those insecurities if this relationship can last?
Yeah. Love that. Love
Mhm.
that. Love that. Someone in a live chat said, yeah, what are our relationships with our families? My family didn't know anything about anything that was going on at the time. They didn't know anything whatsoever. And we're a close knit family, very close knit. But it was something that I just did not share with them whatsoever. Yeah.
I would not have told my family had I not had to go to a funeral. I had to go to a funeral and show up, so they were going to see it. So I let them know. And I don't keep things from my family,
Mhm.
but I was ashamed in that space because I had already been married,
Mhm.
been divorced, like in this new space, and I didn't want them to see same-sex relationships in a negative light.
Mhm.
But they were also very forgiving of that person and individual.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm hyper independent, so I don't come from a big family. I come from a very small, isolated. So I didn't have that option. I didn't really worry about that.
Okay. Okay. Any final takeaways that you want to, share? Because I know we've been talking for a while. We talked about like some of the context, ways that people can support, but like any final, takeaways that either one of you have.
there's a lot there's a lot more folks who are experiencing this or dealing with it, and like because I've received a lot of messages since my post, and so I think the more that we're able to sort of be open and honest about it, like the more we can actually create channels that are appropriate to get people the support and help that they need. And so as someone who's been through it myself, I see you, I hear you again, and I also want to highlight that you're not alone.
Yeah.
I'm going to touch on your point, therapy. I think that is the easiest and safest way just to go speak to someone who can give some insight onto your reality and confirm
Mhm.
the things that you are feeling and get you back to trusting your intuition again. Because your intuition will guide you through life. But if you don't learn to trust it,
Mhm.
you're just going to find yourself in situations where the universe has to sit you down because you're just not trusting what you're feeling.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm big on mentorship and also holding our community accountable for recreating the
Hmm.
narratives on what people say we are about or what we say about who we are ourselves. So I think I would encourage us to have these conversations with our cousins, our family members, but particularly with other gay men. Like have these
Mm-hmm.
conversations and say, you know what, that is not normal and you don't deserve that. And also like, hey, if you do feel yourself getting heated or having, needing a moment, take a breather, walk around the block. So like having these transparent conversations
Hmm.
with each other that if you want to be in a healthy relationship, if you want to find a husband, if you want to love someone, you have to manage, like we talked about, emotional regulation, managing conflict, loving yourself, so that you don't inflict harm on another person. So, I mean, like
Hmm.
literally, us keep talking to each other about this is the only way that we're going to
Yeah.
solve it. Yeah.
You know the famous line from RuPaul. What is it? If you don't love yourself, how the hell are you gonna love somebody else?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean that's so
Right.
important right there. It really is. You gotta love yourself. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I did pin a resource to the Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual, Transgender National Help Center. So if you know anyone who's gone through that, or you just want to have a conversation with somebody, there's the contact information there. I am not a domestic violence specialist, counselor. Let me put that out there. So that's why I put the resource there, and I can DM it to you if you send me a message as well. So if you need some support, but um, I really, again, Aaron and Quincy, thank you so much for being transparent, being vulnerable, sharing your experiences. Based on just like the number of people who have stayed on this live, who have sent DMs while we've been talking, you definitely have impacted and changed someone's lives for sharing your stories. So I take my hat off to both of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Have a good night. Do some self-care after this conversation because I know I need some as well.
Good night, no.
All right. Good
Bye.
night. Good night.